Okay, welcome to Monday.
Yeah. Good morning. Susie's gonna do our presentation of financials.
Okay,
So we have Office of Public Defense with us today. So they're part of the general fund, so their revenues are not going to equal their expenses. We currently have a budget for intergovernmental revenue of 44,000. After running these, we did do our Q3 budget amendment. So we raised the budget to actually equal expenses. So intergovernmental revenue is going to be made up of your state and federal grant funding. So far they've brought in 252,000 so far this year. Goods and services has a budget of 50,000 and so far has brought in just under 11,000. So these include quarterly payments from Great River Behavioral Health. So far they've only received their first quarter payment of 2025. Other financing sources has a budget of 320,000 and so far has brought in just under 130,000. So these are all mental health tax billings that come to our office. So far, they've submitted billings through May. Personnel has a budget of 3.1 million and so far has spent 1.6 million. They do have one vacancy that accounts for 101,000 of the total budget. So keeping that in mind, they still are under budget, even with the vacancy for 7 months of payroll, that would only put them at about 1.7 million. Supplies has a budget of 25,000 and so far it looks like they've spent 45,000. And this one looks a little weird just because there is an accounting entry in there for their SPITA, so subscription-based technology arrangements. So when that entry is done by the auditor's office, it hits supplies, but then you also see it hits debt service and makes that negative amount. So when we back out that accounting entry that's done, they really have only spent 12,000 this year so far. So they are right on target for supplies. Services has a budget of 1.5 million and so far has spent 802,000. So they are just slightly under target for that one. And that's all I have for public defense.
What would be services outside of the payroll?
Services, I'm looking at that right now to make sure I have this correct. I think largely your services are court appointed attorneys that are not salary employees. So
Okay.
conflict counsel. This is an issue that I wanted to bring up to the board.
got recording. Superior Court allows the Office of Public Defense to assign attorneys within the county's office. If we have a conflict of interest, we have attorneys on contract, so an agreed rate for the year. That's in Superior Court. District Court is a problem. District Court, we do not have people on a contract. I have spoken to the civil attorneys in the prosecutor's office about their understanding of who the assignment of appointing conflict counsel falls to. The district court judges view it differently than the Superior Court judges and assign those attorneys themselves. So that gives district court judges who, have their own budget and so forth to basically contract with and assign cases outside of my control or vetting or negotiation, most importantly for this conversation. And I believe that that's basically run amok at this point. There are attorneys doing conflict work for $300 an hour in district court that are being assigned by district court judges currently, and that, in my opinion, is outrageous. nonetheless, we get the bill and we pay it. Because
It comes out of your budget?
comes out of my budget.
And you don't have a say in that.
I don't have a say in that. I've tried to insert myself. I was rebuffed. There is a General Rule 38 that basically explains whose purview it is. My reading of that is it's mine. That's how the Superior Court judges see it as well. And that allows us to control the expense because we have an agreed rate that the commissioners agree to with the contract for each individual attorney at the beginning of the year. So that's a situation that I'm hoping through the budget process we can bring up and hopefully have a better plan for moving forward to avoid this excessive budget line. Because I think the note I got from the commissioners in their review was is this an anomaly? This kind of surplus expenditure? It is this year, but if we don't somehow address it and kind of nip it, it's going to continue to be a problem.
Can you pull that page back up, Kelly? So you don't have you have a say with regards to budgeting the amount that's in there, but you don't have a say as far as what's being spent out of that budget.
Correct.
Correct.
As far as when a judge appoints somebody out of my office for in district court's misdemeanors cases, that attorney then responds to the judge that, you know, I've been appointed to this case, my going rate is X. And that's agreed to outside of me and paid. They basically get a bill at the end of a case and we cover that cost. So that's a concern I thought the commissioners would like to know. It's something I have brought up, and I think it's something that needs to continue to kind of be brought up till a better understanding. Chiefly the main judge that has this other viewpoint is not running again. So that also kind of presents an opening come 2026 to maybe, again, readdress this and come to a different understanding so that my budget isn't affected as it is here.
So look, go ahead, Rick.
Do they have this disconnect in other counties?
It's a mixed bag. Some do, some don't. I'm not able to really compare what the hourly going rate is because in Clark County, $300 an hour for some is a reasonable rate. I'm just comparing it to our own market here. That's
I'm
the
just
highest, but that's too much.
more interested in who's leading this. Is OPD in other counties leading this? In your opinion, do we have the authority to say, hey, we're not paying anything outside of what we have negotiated through OPD?
That, I would need to get back to you on that. I don't know if we have that authority. I mean, we get into this realm of these people that are charged with a crime have a constitutional right to have an attorney. The judges say, okay, OPD, you have a conflict. Therefore, I'm taking you out of the equation altogether. And me, the judge, I know this attorney exists in the county. I'm just going to give them the case, not even considering what it's going to cost. I think if we could readdress just that philosophy in general, that the conflict of interest with our attorney staff doesn't remove the county's public defender service from that conversation and that process. I don't think we have an issue. I think we get several people on board with an agreed rate of pay that's reasonable. But just the removal of me from the process, I think that is more unique to Cowlitz County, yes. And it's something I'm hoping we can reinsert ourselves. I don't know if we can flat out say we won't pay it, because then we get into, I mean, I've thought about this and just said, well, if you're going to take the power of appointment away from OPD, it should fall onto your budget then.
Amen.
It should be your cost.
Yeah.
But then again, I know where I stack up in the kind of the hierarchy of things, and I think that probably needs to be delivered somebody with a little bit more, you know,
So
clout.
you designated the 1.5 million in your budget,
Correct.
and that 802,000 you didn't spend is what you're saying.
I mean, there's a large quantity I would say we did spend. That's part of what we planned for and used, but there is also this chunk that's kind of pushing us to being over budget that is not our doing. With the exact number too, I don't have, I could figure that out, but. So I'm not considering that in the budget numbers I put forward. I'm putting forward numbers based on our need, but just to let the commissioners know that's kind of what's going on with that source of funding.
Okay.
And I didn't know if you wanted to ask questions or if I should just give you a general idea of what the numbers I've put forward in my initial budget too. But as you're aware, we are expanding and doubling our office space. We're also having to increase the amount of attorneys we have in the future. That's based on the Supreme Court changing the caseload standards for public defense attorneys. I'm doing this in a way that I think very narrowly tailored to Cowlitz County and our need, because I've told you before, the caseload standards didn't need to change for us. This was a King County problem. This was a larger county issue, but the Supreme Court has decided to dictate a statewide change in caseload standards. What they did give us as a modicum of some respect or power is the ability to make caseload standards unique to our needs. So what I'm going to do is put forward by the end of the year to the commissioners is basically a Cowlitz County caseload standard for public defense that's more outcome based as far as how many points are allotted a given case. And I think that will allow us, even with this new kind of constrictive caseload standard, to still, for all intents and purposes, operate as we have up until now. So I think that'll be more conversation and not directly related to the budget. But I bring it up because it still will require us in the years to come to add attorneys to our office, just so that we stay out of any sort of place we don't even want to venture to with our ethical duty and caseload limitations. So there are future conversations where I will be requesting to add attorneys, and then there's a ratio of attorney to paralegal, and even we've never had a social worker at the Office of Public Defense. There's actually now a requirement come 2026 that we have at least a social worker on contract, if not full-time employee with our office. So those are other things that are going to come up in the future.
So going back to our previous conversation, is that a conversation that we need to have with the district court? Or is that one you're gonna have?
I'm hinting at that, and I'll just say yes. I think it comes, I talk a lot, and, you know, I let kind of my opinion be known, but since doing so, nothing has even, you know, had a formal meeting about it. So I basically was rebuffed by one of the judges, and that was the end of the complaining. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many points do our attorneys handle that at this point in time?
So the limit for felony attorneys is 150 case weighted points. And so a murder case can get up to about 8 points.
Yeah.
But your standard low ranking felony is a single point. What they're letting us do, they aren't doing an automatic come 2026, you must have this, and I'll say it's it's 47.
I know it's down to 47.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
trying to get
60.
where are we at now?
The 63% cut, but yeah, so 150, we just have to do a 10% decrease for 10 years.
Yeah,
So next year it'll be 135 case weighted points, and then 10% each year down from that. They have said in 3 years they'll do a survey, and they'll see if the desired change in quality has been reached just with 3 years of cuts, but I'm not gonna hold my breath and think they're gonna put the brakes on this thing. I think we're really cruising towards a weird future where, I mean, technically, if you had a busy couple months, there could be public defenders who hit their caseload standards in July. So they have a full caseload for the year, and there's still 5 months left in the year to
So are people running at 150?
No, no, we are already, and that's where I keep saying it's a King County problem. They just weren't managing this well. So people were hitting 150 case points in Seattle. And then I would go to these open forums and people would say, I have 10 homicide cases this year and, several sex crimes, which are also high ranking and very hard work and require a lot of time. And then it would come to my turn and I would just say, well, I assign every case in my office. If I assign one of my senior attorneys a homicide case, I'm not going to assign them another Class A felony for 2, 3 months because that's a lot of work and I want them to focus on it. So we do have a much lower volume to deal with. I think our highest point total last year was right around 100 points. So we were still a third below the standard. So it's just not a Cowlitz County problem. And my approach that they let us create our own case weighting system so long as it follows their intent. I think we can come up with something that allows us to continue to operate without having to expand at the volume that King County is going to need to expand. They're going to have to triple their workforce. At
Do you
least
think our highest one was right around 100?
I can get you an exact number, but I think about 105 case weighted points, and that was a busy attorney last year. So
Yeah.
I don't ever want to come near the maximums because then we open ourselves to liability and potential malpractice claims. So, we don't flirt with that. So in my budget, there are things, and I actually have come back around to on a couple lines that I think I'll address with Kathy later today. But at first I thought, well, we have 2 copiers on the first floor. We'll need 2 more leases, 2 more copy machines on the third floor that we're now gonna take over here pretty soon. And revisiting that, I think there's other ways we can still modify our budget to not just double. Basically, that was my initial thought. We have to double. We need double the supplies, double this. I think we're backing away from that with a much more of a want versus need type approach. So I think we'll be amending some of our lease equipment line and other things just to kind of, in harmony with what we're having to do as a county. So.
That's good. You're doubling your square footage, but not necessarily your workload.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And the accessibility to, a copy machine that's a good new copy machine. I mean, I think we can still work with what we got. So there's still ways we can make this work without doubling our budget. So I'm really avoiding that. Good. There was one line as well I thought I would address, and that's kind of touching on what we initially said with the appointment of conflict counsel. So I come to the commissioners usually towards the end of the year with people's contracts, conflict attorneys' contracts to renew. That's going to be a harder game because of this caseload standard. What I think is going to, without hiding, I'm sure they may be watching or not, but I think individually employed attorneys, sole practitioners, they're going to need more compensation to do conflict work because what they're basically having to balance is what could I make if I don't renew a contract with Cowlitz County and take conflict counsel? There is no caseload limitation on these sole practitioners. The caseload limitation are on people who have contracts to do indigent public defense. So they have to weigh what they could make on their own without a contract versus what they can contracting with us. So it is an increased budget line from the year before. I've actually already heard from one of the people we have on contract this year that he got an offer from Portland that he cannot turn down. It's almost double what his current contract was with Cowlitz County. So that's the first I've heard of that. I'm trying to just lay the seeds with the 2 remaining conflict attorneys and make sure we have them in line. That is concerning to me because we do have to have competent, trustworthy, good public defense attorneys that are not in the Office of Public Defense on contract for that contract, that conflict work. So that is a budget line that is not decreasing, it's probably increasing with that in mind. And once I have a better feel for what the two attorneys I have hoping to renew their contracts for next year, I'll come to the commissioners with a more detailed approach to what I think the cost should be for ensuring we have that service.
Stepping back a minute to the district judges on that services. Would it be possible for you to identify what they, out of that money that's been spent, what they've directly appointed?
Yes.
Could
that's
you
not-
do
that-
that and
yep,
send that to us?
Certainly. Yep. And it's bigger than it's ever been. I can say that.
What constitutes a conflict and who decides that it is a conflict?
So conflicts of interest, it's a vast array. Largely, the most common one is a former client. So we represent somebody usually on an impeachable crime, so a crime of dishonesty, theft, or some other crime. If that person takes the stand as a witness in a different case, an attorney has to cross-examine that person. The conflict is if you've represented that individual or somebody in your firm has, or the Office of Public Defense is considered legally a law firm, you cannot impeach a former client. So if I, pull up the daily probable cause statements and somebody has been victimized that is a former client, I have to find counsel outside of our office because no attorney at the Office of Public Defense can then potentially interview or cross-examine in trial a former client. We know information, details about that impeachable offense that somebody else would not be privy to, and we have an ongoing fiduciary duty to a former client not to impeach them or bring up their criminal history against them. So that's the most obvious conflict of interest. That's what we deal with most often. Outside of that, non-victims, victims that are not former clients. So people that have been victimized by clients of the Office of Public Defense. It's a bit odious to then also cross-examine them. So depending on the severity of the charge, the likelihood of trial, that might be found to be a conflict as well. There are sometimes breakdowns in attorney-client relationships that lead to conflicts as well. We deal with some difficult people in our line of work, and sometimes there's just no maintaining a long-lasting working relationship, to put it kindly. And based on that falling out, a judge will declare that a conflict exists, ask us to appoint somebody out of office. So there's numerous ways that conflicts come up, but
So Ian, wouldn't your first description of a conflict, by default, wouldn't those cases actually become more and more frequent as, kind of like the ping pong on the mouse traps where one goes and then two and then three and then six and then 12. And I mean,
that does
seems-
happen. More often, unfortunately, a lot with recidivism, a lot of times it's just the same people that continually get, law enforcement contact. Here we are again, and the conflict that existed the last 3 times exists still. That's more common actually. But yes, sometimes it does have that kind of cascading effect. And that's why it's nice to have in Superior Court 3 separate attorneys that likely don't have conflicts that shared amongst each other. Yes, yeah, that does happen. But I mean, it's a vast array of conflicts and how they come about. And they do sometimes feed off one another and create a pool of people. In gang-related cases, which are not common, but when those come up, we'll have 5 co-defendants, and 2 of them might decide that they want to strike a deal and testify against accomplices. Well, now we have 5 people that cannot be represented by the same office either. So I mean, that also happens. So I need to find 5 attorneys for one case, one in each office. So that's a difficulty where we have to reach out of county to make an individual offer for a case. But the first question, who determines the conflict? In Superior Court, every day I review the people that have been arrested and charged with a felony from the day before. We identify conflicts. We have a very good database that informs us of former clients, former witnesses that are in the police report. Once we get more information, we can run a secondary conflict check. The judges in district court often cite a conflict but don't assert it. We do have a role in finding the conflict, so that's part where we are involved with the process. But then as soon as it comes to appointing counsel, we're removed. In Superior Court, that's not the case. The judges look to us to appoint counsel, which I think is the correct reading of the applicable rule, so.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, then the judges all share the same general area in the courthouse, but different,
You need
completely
a Superior
different.
Court judge to arbitrate this.
It actually in the end might fall to a Superior Court judge to arbitrate it, but I would think they'd actually ask for an advisory opinion from probably Division II or something as far as how we interpret the general rule that applies.
You mentioned earlier, Rule 38. Is that a whack or,
That's a general court rule, general rule.
and who decides the general court rules?
Again, if disputes are raised, it's usually done through the appellate court. You'd raise an issue and say, hey, we have a difference of opinions. The county, represented by our civil attorneys, see it this way. The judges would probably submit an opinion of their own and then ask for a panel of the 3 Division II judges to rule on that.
So these rules come from a panel of 3 division.
Oh, the general rules are legislatively created and imposed. So I mean,
Okay.
they're statewide, but interpretations of statutes are always issues that come up, and it could go through the normal channels of dispute. I think when I brought this up to our civil attorneys, they thought we could do it in a much more collegial way and just kind of contact the judges and say, why are we doing it this way? And again, it was basically a blanket rebuff of just, that's how we do it. And then, I mean, as far as notes I had for budget issues to bring up, that's pretty much it. There was a hope for a potential kind of drastic reduction in our subscription. We have a line for dues and subscriptions, and I just wanted to clarify that a lot of required memberships fall under that. One of the perks we're able to use when we recruit attorneys is the fact that we pay bar dues. Those are expensive for a full staff of attorneys. We also we're members to a couple organizations in Washington State that allow us a great access to other attorneys, state OPD resources, expert banks, so we can, instead of having to hire an expert, we would just have access to their research and information to use in our work. So the cost of doing business, so to speak, for the attorneys, I just really can't touch that line, because when I interview somebody who's taking the bar exam or maybe just graduated law school, one of the perks I'm able to sell them is, with our job, we pay your bar dues, so you don't have to pay that. And you're going to be a member of WACDL and WDA and all these other organizations that really are a huge source of information. There's also a generally accepted as the premier legal research engine, which is called Westlaw. We also have a Westlaw subscription for each one of our attorneys, so they can do legal research in the courtroom on the fly. They have new AI technology that other legal databases don't, so it really puts us right on the front edge where any other county would be. So it's a necessary expenditure, but it is, I understand, one of our larger budget lines. Oh, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, so we did apply. Thank you, Kathy. We did apply for a grant. We, as a rural county, qualified for a wonderful grant that allowed us to get two second-year law students that were going into their third year. One of them's actually a Woodland local who's in law school in Willamette and is coming, hopefully coming back to us. And that was a zero in the end, zero sum uh, venture. The grant paid for their entire time with us, paid for their cost of living. It was a great program. So that's something that I'm hoping leads to recruitment. It also leads hopefully to local recruitment because there has been a strange trend of people from our area, Cowlitz County area, going to law school and just never coming back. So I'm hoping through this program, people that are interested in criminal law can come here, work. It doesn't affect our bottom line one way or another, and they actually get paid because good interns are hard to come by. If you can pay them, that's the way to do it. So that's our first year doing that. It's called the SPAR grant, and it was just a great success. We had two wonderful young ladies in our office this last 2 months that just kind of brought energy, and it was great. So we just to let you know, we are seeking out anything like that we can find, applying for it and utilizing it. So that's a great program, and I'm glad you reminded me to mention that. Thank you. Just ended, and it was very sad to see him go back to school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, I figure we'll have follow-up on this issue I've raised. So
Yeah.
I'll get an
Send-
exact figure for,
Send those over to us. Yeah,
Will
that'd
do.
be great. Thank
okay,
you.
Thanks, Ian.
thank you.
So next we'll have water sewer. Okay, so goods and services has a budget of just over 2.5 million, and so far they've brought in 1.1 million, so they are slightly under target. This is largely customer billings for water and sewer services. There typically is roughly a 45-day delay from billings going out and customers making payments. Miscellaneous revenue has a budget of 90,000 and so far has brought in 36,000 for the year. 32,000 of that is investment earnings.
So on the revenue side of goods and services, I think we just want to get some clarification because that red dot's a lot higher than that green bar we see on the piece of paper there. So for this month of August, our due dates is today. So there's been no money really collected as, auto pays and things like that take place. And at the beginning of the year, the first 2 months, similar to solid waste we've talked about, get accrued to the prior year. So the green bar is really only defining about 5 months of revenue. So if we were to look at it from that point of view, we see about $215,000 per month. There is some cyclical nature to that where the summer gets higher, people are watering their gardens and other things like that. So we do see some higher bills there. And that would bring us to the budgeted value that we expect to see maybe a little over by the end of the year.
So you still believe we're on target?
Yeah.
Okay, personnel has a budget of just over 1 million and so far has brought or spent 454,000. So they do have one vacancy in this department. And there is a little extra cushion in this line item just for unknowns with vacancies, or not vacancies, sorry, retirements and stuff like that. Supplies has a budget of 572,000 and so far has spent 276,000. So they are slightly under for that category as well. Services has a budget of 854,000 and so far has spent 476,000. So they are right on target for the year for that category. Transfers, they had a budget of 750,000 and they've made that transfer. That 750,000 goes to the Water Sewer Reserve Fund.
So I'm sure as you guys have known in the past, hiring engineers has been difficult. I believe we have that spot filled as of this morning. So we will not have any vacancies left in that fund. So that's exciting.
Nice.
So the Water Sewer Reserve Fund has a budget of 2.2 million for intergovernmental revenue. So that was expected grant funding for Riderwood and Shadow Mountain projects. Those projects are being pushed to 2026, so that funding is going to be pushed to 2026 as well. So we will be amending that budget in the fourth quarter. Miscellaneous revenue has a budget of 141,000 and so far has brought in 108,000. So they are over the target on that one. Other financing sources has a budget of 7.5 million and so far has year-to-date actuals of 2.4 million. 750,000 of that was from the water sewer operating fund, and the rest are planned ARPA transfers. With projects being pushed to 2026, we are anticipating that some ARPA dollars will be pushed to 2026 as well, and we would anticipate amending that budget in the fourth quarter.
So how much do we have sitting in reserves? Is that this 13 or?
I believe we're around 4.5,
4.5 million
if I recall correctly. Need to
sitting in
double check
reserves
that.
right now, and we put
Mhm.
about 750 a year in.
Yep,
in there.
750 is our goal.
And that's mainly for the big infrastructure type stuff.
Yeah, if we didn't have ARPA funding for these 5 major projects that Susan's team's been working on, we would be pulling debt to fund most of those projects,
Yeah.
or be not doing them, such as Shadow Mountain may not have made economical sense.
Yeah, and I understand that, but our infrastructure out there, I know we've talked in the past, kind of the life expectancy on some of that, because we end up usually inheriting these things.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, so usually when the system's failing is when we'll take it over. You know, we've had some discussions in the past about certain systems that may come into the water sewer program, and the state of those when they do come in.
I'm guessing our reserves couldn't handle a major issue with a system.
If we were to have
Without some debt.
yeah, you know, we do have currently outstanding loans that we're paying back on an annual basis, either water quality loans or Department of Commerce loans. And that's pretty standard for this kind of a fund, you know, they're built into the rates. As we continue to look at our capital plans for this in the future, we'll try to align those with that plan. And if we have any questions on the projects, Susan's in the audience.
But on the Riderwood or
Any of them.
yeah.
Okay, so personnel has a budget of 62,000 and so far has spent just over 5,000. So employees when they spend time on capital projects, that's when their time is allocated to this fund. It's not on a regularly occurring monthly interval. Services has a budget of 320,000 and so far hasn't spent anything to date. My understanding from my conversations with Sean that these are for a partial comp plan update that includes the rates and other capital requirements that will most likely be happening later this year. Debt service has a budget of 13,000 and so far has spent just over $1,200, so it is under target for this category. Capital has a budget of $10.5 million and so far has spent 1.7 million. We listed the projects there that those costs are for, but with Riderwood and Shadow Mountain moving to next year, we anticipate making a fourth quarter budget amendment to reduce the capital budget down.
Sean, those loans that you talk about, are they reflected in this debt service line here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any miscellaneous? I have one we might want to look at. We've had a Silver Lake Advisory Committee. It was actually formed, well, the newspaper article is from September of 2010. It was a newly formed 17-person committee will investigate the needs of Silver Lake and make recommendations how to improve and safeguard the lake's water quality. This was a committee set up by the BOCC at that time. It's a lot of our committees are part of some WAC or something. This isn't one of those. This is one that the BOCC in 2009 or 10 decided they would set up. The council will include representatives from Southwest Clean Air Agency, the Cowlitz County Tourism Bureau, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, State Departments of Ecology, National Resources, Fish and Wildlife, Weyerhaeuser Company, Cowlitz Conservation District, and Silver Lake Flood Control District. To my knowledge, I'm not aware that any of those agencies attend those meetings anymore. Shauna, Fish and Wildlife might have came to one. I think and then we appointed or we asked a person to kind of oversee that committee, and that's always been Gary from WSU, over here. He's retired now, and the new director of WSU does not want to take this on. Most of what these people that have migrated over to the collaborative, this almost feels like it was an early version of the collaborative, then it's kind of migrated over. So the question is, do we want, since this is a committee that was established by the Board of County Commissioners, do we want to rescind this thing and let the collaborative take this? Because right now it's usually just people that live on the lake.
How active have they been?
They'll have some people show up and there are things they want to do, core samples and different things, but they don't have the horsepower of some of these agents behind them to help them get the grants. I think you may be able to make a case that there'd be probably more sense for them to mix in with the collaborative and work on that. Even though it's not Silver Lake specific, it is that whole corridor. So I don't know. I don't know that we need to make a decision right now, but it's just one of those things that came up.
I guess I'm wondering if the collaborative is gonna serve their purposes better than keeping this organization. If not, yeah, move them into the collaborative
Might be worth a conversation with them.
at least. Yeah.
Because we don't have a person that wants to, at this point in time, we don't have a department that wants to oversee it and work it, so. He usually comes in and sees me. I don't know if it's once a month or every so often. I'll sit down with him and see what they want to do. I have suggested that maybe they work with a collaborative that might be a little more helpful, but
Okay.
Yeah.
so just kind of more aware that that's sitting out there. See anything else you want to, what do we have? We have finance. I don't have the sheriff yet, but we have or the clerks, noxious weed, public works. I have two here. We can get you guys taken care of. You okay with that?
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. For agenda items, we have, I think, about 3 items. The first one is a resolution to adopt alternative dates specifically for 2026 and 2027 biennial county budgets. And this resolution lays out the exact dates that will be used for the biennium budget preparation. And specifically, we are wanting to call out September 9th for the preliminary biennium budget to be presented to the board under RCW for the budgets. It's typically done the first, I think, Monday or Tuesday of the month, and that's right after the holiday. And so we're going to amend that and change it to September 9th. And this resolution will allow us to do that.
Okay.
So, and it doesn't change any of the other dates we have planned. We're hoping to present the final budget December 2nd for board approval.
We're just trying to move this off the holiday weekend.
Yeah. And I appreciate it too, because it gives us a little bit more time to put some charts and things like that together for you as well. Are you ready for my next item? We have 2 interlocal agreements that will be on the agenda for tomorrow. One is between the Cowlitz Wahkiakum Council of Governments, and that's for a feasibility study that they had proposed with the rural public facilities funds, the interest income on those funds. And so this is a project that they wanted to have a study for dredge materials and Mount St. Helens sand. And they'll be in attendance tomorrow in case there's any questions. The contract is for $121,000.
That's in motion items. What are the eligible things for this interest income?
Actually, anything that the board
So
recommends.
we could apply it to, for example, a park project or apply it to basically anything. It's just interest income and we don't have really restrictions on that.
Right. I think in the past, it has always been spent on things that still could lead to economic development or projects like that. There's been feasibility studies before.
So we try to keep it in that realm of what we asked for with the rural funds.
Mhm. But the interest income the actual rural public facility funds they have to show that they're creating jobs. It's for infrastructure, things like that. So this one is a little bit less restrictive. So
What is the difference between this interlocal agreement for the St. Helens Sand than what we did before?
I think this is that one. We're just now finalizing it.
yeah, so they had presented an application and you had approved their application, and this is now the official contract so that they can be paid.
And we have to vote on that, correct?
Yeah, if you have it under motion, yes.
What was it we voted on before?
You voted on awarding the project from the interest income. So this is just the formality of the actual contract for their work.
Yeah. This would normally show on a consent agenda, and I ask it go to
A motion.
a motion because I still had concerns about it and wanted to have a conversation. So that it makes it look a little different.
So,
I'm actually in favor of it being a motion item so that we can have a conversation, because when it was put before us, I personally didn't have a lot of time to research that. And after doing some research, I want to have a conversation about it. So, yeah.
okay. So it will, and they will be present during this item as well, so that they can answer any questions. And then the last item I have is also an interlocal agreement. And this is for the Scott Hill Sports Complex with the Woodland Rotary Foundation. And this is also an award of the Public Facilities, Rural Public Facilities Fund, and it's $550,000 to complete that Phase 1 project. And I'm not sure if they're going to be here, but I've invited them to be here just in case. And that's everything I think I have. Okay,
Okay, thank
thank
you.
you.
Susan, you want to go? I see you here. Brad is online. Let me take Brad quick since he's online. Okay, I'll stay in order. Thank you. Sorry. Brad, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, sorry, I was on a phone call, but anyway, what we have tomorrow is a hearing on an amendment to the county animal code. Mr. Lorraine, I think, appeared before the board back on July 8th, proposing these amendments. And so tomorrow is just the actual formal hearing on those adjustments. And I can just give you a brief overview what this entails. It has to do with the county animal code, section 6.12.190, the habitual violator. That's where if an animal gets 3 violations within a 12-month period, the Animal Control Authority can take action to serve them with a notice of abatement. And abatement means either they can transfer the animal out of Cowlitz County, transfer ownership to somebody not related to them or who does not live with them, or have the animal euthanized. The reason for some of these changes, just Mr. Lorraine of the prosecutor's office thought we could clean up the language to make it more clear what the due process is for people that would be served with that. One of the main changes here is in the first paragraph where it talks about where the notice can be served on the animal owner, irrespective of whether the person receiving the notice owned the animal at any of the time of the 3 offenses. They changed that for consistency to change it to the animal owner or the person in control of the animal. So they wanted to make that change in that regard. In that same paragraph, it changes it, the process of service on them from certified mail to a broader any means authorized for service of process under the laws of the state of Washington, which basically entail a private service or personal service on the person of the notice of abatement. And then further down, there were some additional changes. Section D, it said it was, currently it says it's unlawful for an animal owner to fail to comply with an abatement notice. Well, it doesn't say what any penalty would be for that. It's just unlawful. This changes it and actually makes it an infraction under the county animal code. Do not comply with an abatement. And then the last paragraph that we have, it kind of just expands on some of the language on some, make some additions to that. It says a committed finding or for a prior infraction or criminal conviction shall be sufficient to prove violations. So basically, if there's been a finding by a judge of these 3 violations, that's the basis for the abatement. And it also says if a person fails to appeal, and currently both, the language doesn't change on the appeal portion. Once somebody's served, they have 15 days to appeal it to the district court. And this just adds a failure of the animal owner or person in control of the animal to file an appeal within 15 days of the notice, or failure of the animal owner or person in control of the animal who has filed an appeal to appear at the scheduled hearing shall act as an admission of the violation. So if they fail to file an appeal or fail to show up at the appeal, then it'll be deemed the abatement order has been put into place and they further have to comply with that. So that's, I guess, the long and short of it. And I don't know if you had any questions on that, those proposed changes.
I think this is the one. I think we've been pretty well schooled in this, so I think
Okay, yep.
it should go well. Okay.
Good with it.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see the clerks are not, we go ahead. Okay, so we don't expect them. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Public Works has 4 items on the agenda this week, all on the consent. The first item is a novation agreement with Exeltech Consulting and Exeltech Bowman Company. So we have an existing contract with Exeltech, an engineering consultant firm, to do a design for us for the Rose Valley Road culvert. They have merged with the Bowman Corporation, and now they are Exeltech Bowman. So this is just paperwork, basically saying that our agreement is moving from one to the other. We're working with the exact same people, the exact same office. It's just we're following up with the legal paperwork since they've changed their name. So that's pretty straightforward. It's no cost to us, just following up with the paperwork. The other 3 items are all property acquisition that we talked about in June for our Tower Road Rock Creek Culvert Replacement Project. The follow-up with the recorded documents. There is our 2 permanent easements with one with the Belfields and one with Mr. and Mrs. Edmonds, and then a temporary agreement with Mr. and Mrs. Belfield. The temporary easement is for us to be able to tie their driveway back in and do some stream restoration. So the temporary easement is 1/4 of an acre with Mr. and Mrs. Belfield, and the permanent easements are 3/100 of an acre with Mr. and Mrs. Belfield, and then 103 square feet with Mr. and Mrs. Edmonds, just to make some minor changes to the roadway and keep it within right of way.
When's this one on our schedule? Probably 26 or later.
So it'll be next summer. We're trying to time it to minimize the impact on the school traffic.
Um,
Yeah.
So next
I
summer.
don't blame him. Okay.
Thank you.
It sounds like the clerk is out of the office today, but David did send us an email to all of us regarding, I think, under consent agenda item 2. We might want to get up with, and then Jennifer will probably be this item 4. This is something they've done in the past. Should probably be in tomorrow. Okay. We have anything? I see. Are we okay to move into the next one? I see some visitors. Were those for this session or is that coming up? Okay, so that's, so we can move into the human resources. Jessica, do you have stuff you have?
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have one request from Office of Public Defense requesting to fill a public defense attorney position. The attorney resigned, I think, 2 months ago, so they're ready to fill her position.
I'm okay, yeah.
Okay. And then the only other item I have is an executive session for collective bargaining. I would say 5 minutes.
Okay. Executive session, collective bargaining, 5 minutes. We will take care of that.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 10:14 a.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 10:19 a.m.
Okay, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. Sean, want to move into Janice house? Exciting.
Hello, Commissioners again. Today we have Janice House. They occupy two of our properties on Washington Street in Longview.
Mhm.
And they're here to share their stories and what they do. So there's Tina, and then she can have her crew come up as well.
Want to make sure the mics are all turned on for them.
Good morning. So my name is Tina Perdaman. So I'm the program supervisor of Janice Youth Programs here in Cowlitz County, which was started in 2016. So we do lease two houses from you guys on Washington Street. So it came about to renew the leases, which hasn't been done in quite a while. And so, we're here just to talk about the work that we do. And then also the lease, to see, if we can expand that. How the lease worked previously, we don't have any kind of funding for facilities, for the work that we do. And so when we came into the two homes on Washington Street, the way that the lease is rather than paying like a rent, we would help to update the homes, which were in pretty bad shape when we got there. So that's what we've been doing, is kind of rehabbing the homes. Initially, you really couldn't even walk into them. There was a lot of squatters that had kind of taken over. So we partnered with Love Inc. and some other places to get the homes like in a position where we could actually be working from them safely. And we've just continued doing that and running the programs that we have.
I think
So
initially, Sean, we were just gonna destroy those homes, right? And then we found another purpose for them, okay. And you said 2016, is Janice House is it unique to Cowlitz County? I mean, we
yes,
have like Chai Cafe, but there's one down in Vancouver. They're part of it, a little larger, but Janice is a standalone,
yes,
unique to Cowlitz County.
yeah. So we do have, so initially we started out with one program, which was a street outreach program, called the Yellow Brick Road, where we would just go out, meet with youth, would carry, backpacks around and just, kind of get to know the youth of the county. Really looking for unstably housed youth, that we could try to support. And from there, we've kind of grown into multiple programs, just really looking at the need of what's going on with the kids in our county, and trying to support that. So we do have the Janice House, which, that's 202 Washington Street. It's a drop-in center, where really we provide the basics for kids. The community has supported us tremendously. So still, here in 2025, we still don't have any type of funding specifically for the houses or what we have at the houses. So the community really provides everything that we have. So, hygiene, school supplies, we have a full kitchen in there. So all the food that comes to the Janice House, that's all provided by community donations, which has been absolutely amazing. We have an entire room dedicated just for clothes, back to school stuff, socks, shoes, backpacks. There's so much, I can't even name it all. We do have youth come in sometimes where we don't have like the proper size for them, or they're needing something different just based on their needs. And it's just been a blessing that we have all of these people we can reach out to and say, hey, we have a kiddo needing this, and they'll literally bring it the same day. So the programs rely heavily on the community of Cowlitz County. And then, of course, the county itself, with the homes and, having a place for us to be. So the programs that we currently have, we have the Janice House. We have the street outreach program. So newly, we have grip housing and keys housing, which is our first time doing any kind of housing with our youth. Which it's just been amazing. It was an opportunity presented by the state with some funding behind it, that came from the state's Y for Y board, which is Youth for Youth, which is a new way the state is doing things. So basically, they have youth who are their own board, who have experienced similar situations, and they actually get to come up with programs that they know that work for youth. Or maybe it's something that was never available, and they know that like something like this would work for youth that they didn't have. And so the funding goes through this board. They basically come up with all the parameters, what it looks like, and then they put out RFPs. And so we were chosen for one of those. And so it's been very interesting with this housing model, that we kind of have this youth board that really are kind of like our boss, to say, this is what we want to see, here's the parameters. And so that's been fairly new. We're in our second year of that. We also have Keys Housing, which is more of a funding stream, that we use for more like emergency type situations. Getting anybody into housing, it's not easy. It's not an overnight thing. We do have some youth that need like immediate services. And so we use that funding source to cover those type of situations, which has also been new. That's been, I think, the last year and a half, we've had that pocket of funding. We also have the Sotero project, where we're working with youth who have been commercially or sexually exploited in sex trafficking. It was a very large program. We had 2 staff that were the only 2 state certified CSEC trainers. And so we went around to some law enforcement agencies to do just some basic training. Community members, we would do some basic training, and then we also sat on the CSEC task force. So currently, there's been a lot of budget cuts going on with nonprofits, unfortunately. So the Sotero project currently, as it sits, is an unfunded project. We did lose funding for staff for that, but we still do the work. There's a lot of youth that we work with in all of the programs, where that really does go hand in hand, where they're either very vulnerable. They're at a higher risk for sex trafficking. We also partner with other community agencies that are not maybe as familiar with sex trafficking, maybe like the red flags, that sort of thing. And so anytime they call us, we're still going to show up. And so we'll mutually, work with the client. Even though we would like to see that program come back, that's completely up to the state and whether like those funding resources come back.
Would you say that's a significant problem in our area?
It is. It definitely is. And I know, it's been fairly new, I would say, over the last 5 years. And I know when we started the Satara project, that was always a question. Is that really happening in Cowlitz County? It definitely is. It's one of those things that's very underreported. A lot of people just are not familiar with it to really be able to identify that, oh, this is what's going on. We've learned that through the task force as well. We've had people contact law enforcement in Cowlitz County, to basically ask, when you have a situation like this, why are we not seeing the numbers? And so what we've learned as a task force is the way that it is coded. They actually don't have coding for sex trafficking. So it's either put under like a child abuse and neglect tag. So there's a lot of reasons why we can't get accurate numbers. And I think like step one is just learning about it. So that was something we really did enjoy doing, was going around and just, educating people. Just to bring awareness, really, like this is happening. Here's the things to look for. If you have a youth come to you talking about X, Y, and Z, you really need to be asking more questions. So it definitely is something we deal with in this county.
I agree with you. I believe it's real. Believe it's a much bigger problem than we get led to believe. And this sounds like it's more of an education project role you kind of took on with this. This
Yeah.
Satara project is
Yeah.
more of an education. Any idea of how many kids you might have touched in Cowlitz County? I mean, is it something you go to schools with, or you just have conversation with kids if you see them triggering some signs that might indicate to you?
Yeah, so earlier on, when we had the funding for the project, in the trained staff, we did make it a point to go around, talk about screening tools to use, red flags. So kind of giving people like your basic CSEC training, of what to look for. So if you're hearing something to this nature, here's some more questions to ask. Because the truth is, in talking with youth, whether it be on the streets or in the schools, they don't label it as sex trafficking. And so that's a really important thing to realize as well. They don't have a name for what's going on, but if you take the time to listen, ask the questions, hear the story, we as professionals, like that's absolutely sex trafficking. But with kids, they're not gonna label it, I guess, with the professional term of it, if that makes sense.
Do you think it starts with online contact, or is it like person-to-person contact? I mean, is a kid hooked to somebody online and then it develops from there? Or is it more, somebody just starts approaching children?
Um, so that's a really good question and something that we used to touch on a lot. Um, I think we see these movies, right, of like a man pulls up and snatches somebody,
Right.
and then they get stuck in like a sex trafficking ring. Um, that's actually so when you're looking at sex trafficking, there's a couple different categories. And that is probably the least one of what happens. It does absolutely still happen. Um, it's been a few years back, but I don't know if you guys heard of what happened in Kalama. Um, so that is actually exactly how that happened in Kalama. With that, I believe she was like 14. Um, the most common type of sex trafficking is actually familial. So that is at the top of the list. Where you have family members trafficking out young girls. And there's all the reasons behind that. Mostly what we have seen, and I think what the data shows, when you have parents who are drug addicted, which unfortunately, and especially in this county, we have seen a huge increase in parental addiction, drug use. And so that actually is the number one. Basically where they're trading out, teenage daughters and they're making money off of that. Nobody wants to hear that. So they're difficult conversations to be had of what's really going on, and especially in our county.
Well, they may not want to hear it, but they should hear it.
Yes.
Makes me ill. Homeless kids, how many do you deal with? I mean, how many kids run through Janice's house?
So we have kids that I guess basically are your traditional drop-in kids. So they'll come in, chat with us. Maybe they just need like a hygiene kit, like, hey, some food in my backpack, which has actually become more rare over the years. So if you look at other drop-in centers, they're very much, they're kind of informal, honestly. What we have done is we've kind of taken it to be not so much just a drop-in, but where we're actually taking these kids under intensive case management to look at, what all is going on. Are you in school? If you are, how is school going? How are you getting there? Do you have medical insurance? So we've really taken it from, some kind of a simple thought of a drop-in center and turned it into, we are safe people. This is a safe place to come. Let's start working on all of the things. We'll pull in resources, make referrals, we'll stand with you, every step of the way through that. We're not gonna just hand you off to another organization and then figure it out on your own. So I know right now, currently we have somewhere, I think it's 75 under intensive case management. And so, like I said, that covers everything that is going on in their life. And so we're very like versatile. If it's something we can't help with, we're gonna find somebody that can come in and help with that. We've had, honestly, I don't have a number since we've started of how many kids have come through. I could guess Georgia is our our numbers person.
So, the way our case management works, like currently right now, we do have 75 under case management. That doesn't include their children because we are ages 12 to 24. So we might see some 22, 23-year-olds who have infants or toddlers. We can't count those numbers, but, everybody might be living in their car or at a shelter, or transitional housing. We still provide things to the youngers who don't count, as our numbers, or siblings. We do have siblings taking care of siblings. So a 10-year-old living with their 18-year-old sibling, does not count as a number for us, but we still are going to provide services for them. We still reach out to the community for school clothes, for the 10-year-old, school supplies, for the 10-year-old. We'll never turn a homeless youth away, no matter their age.
So of these 75 under, they have, is it fair to say they all have housing issues?
Yes. They're either at risk of losing housing. Some of them are considered hosted, where they're staying with another family, but under circumstances, like if you can provide food, then you can crash on the couch. If you can bring in shampoo, conditioner, toilet paper, that will get you another week here. So those are preventative measures that we take to provide the household with support to keep a roof over their head, until we're able to move into the housing programs.
Of those, kind of hogging the mic here, but this is an interesting thing to me. Of the 75, now I realize some are probably out of school age, but are they still attending school? Are they doing those type of things?
We do have some that are in college or working towards their GEDs.
Okay.
That are over the age of 18. We work with Goodwill program, their opportunities program, and also LCC has High School Plus programs. So we definitely do the warm handoff, go into the schools with them, get them signed up for their programs, and provide food.
But
And
one's high school age, and if you're down to 12, middle school age, are they still in school?
yes, for the most part, I can't think of any of the youngers that aren't in school. Okay. There are some that want to get back into school, and we're definitely there to help walk them
Okay.
into that. But we do have some 16, 15-year-olds that are dropouts, where we have goals, and that falls under their case management, how to get them back enrolled.
Of the ones that you said you don't count in those situations, why don't you count them?
Our program is, it's for 12 to 24-year-olds. So providing services is not, like, we can't provide those numbers to the state and say we're helping this many people. We do track how many youngers we do have. And on the housing side, if they're in the housing program, that program allows us to count the numbers. So the toddlers that are living with the parents, those are considered numbers that we can count.
Yeah, and I think, it goes back to, so this is actually our whole team. There's 3 of us. So it really goes back to, there's the things that we're funded to do, right? But then when you're faced with so much need in the county, or, right now, this last 6 months, last year, we have so many youth who are taking care of younger siblings. And so, this is the part where, like, in-house, we can kind of track what's going on. That way, it's something I can look at and, like, this is definitely a need in this county. And so, you know, really trying to navigate that, to look for other resources of, here's this huge gap that we have. How do we fill that? You know, and like Georgia was saying, we're not going to not serve kids just because they're not hitting that mark. Does that make sense? And so we definitely have youngers, you know, that are being taken care of by their siblings who are 17, 18. And so whatever we can do, we're going to make sure that we do it. Whether it's, you know, I guess the black and white a part of our program or not, because they're kids. And
So how often are you getting requests to help kids under the age of 12?
a lot. Most of our,
Well, that's not much of a number for me, but
you know,
how often does it happen?
so I would say with the kids that come into our housing, so they can't, you know, sign a lease until they're 18. I would say there's probably 90% of them that come with somebody younger than 12. As far as the number that we've housed in the last year, how many have we housed?
We've housed 40. There were 51 enrolled in our program. Got my notes here. 51 enrolled in YGP from when we first got our grant until today. 40 housed successfully. One went back with their family. One went into a transitional youth program. One got into the Haswa Section 8 housing. Two were also accepted into the CAPS, their YAP program, their young adult housing, where they provide more, they can provide more rental assistance than we're able to provide. So encouraged that. And then four stop contacting us. So we just have to exit them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So there was, you know, out of 51, 40 successfully housed, one just on Friday.
Yeah, so it really goes back to, you know, there's a lot of things that we never tracked. And it's not until it's like, you know, we start to see, okay, this is happening more and more. And then we will all talk and, hey, we should probably be tracking this just for our own purposes, to see, again, where is that gap in our county? You know, it's not required by anybody or anywhere. And it's not until we really see that this is happening more frequently, that we will start tracking it. So to have like a solid number, like in the last 2 years, we can't do that. It has been happening since the beginning of our programs, but it's not something that we really tracked until it started becoming, you know, almost every single youth that we're dealing with and trying to get transitioned into housing. They either already have a little one, or they're taking care of siblings because parents are not fit, or they're incarcerated, or, you know, there's something else going on.
You mentioned earlier an increase in parental addiction, drug abuse. I don't want to assume, but I would guess that's the driver behind some of the numbers you're seeing?
When it comes to
People coming in or kids, older children taking care of younger children?
yes, yeah.
What do you consider successful housing?
When they're able to pay their own rent and
Okay.
budget and
Have you worked with them? They found a job?
Oh, yeah.
They've figured out how to
Yeah,
budget and.
those are definitely measures of success. And then working towards better employment, maybe they're employed, but they're barely scraping. Helping them with their job, their resumes, setting them up with other programs, and getting them better employment so they can afford more.
In doing what you guys do, are you mandatory reporters?
Yes.
A child comes to you and reports something okay.
Yes.
How often do you get requests to help kids from outside the county?
Recently.
That's been a little more and more. So in those situations, and I think a lot of it too has to do with, if you look at Cowlitz County, in the boundaries of Cowlitz County, there's some places that get a little confused of what county. So Woodland, for example, technically it's half Cowlitz, half Clark. And so, working with like Woodland School District, we kind of have to balance that and like, where exactly are they? If they're clearly Clark County, here's some resources for Clark County. And obviously, those bigger places have much more resources than what we do. Going north, it's also difficult. You have Castle Rock, Toledo, and then you kind of have Vader that's just out in the middle of nowhere, that is also on that line into Lewis County. So, we're very cognizant to make referrals, whether it is going that way to Clark County or that way to Lewis County. I think a change did happen when Bader kids started to go to Castle Rock School District. So like now all Vader, they don't have their own school. So now they're all Castle Rock kids. So, we really try to work within the parameters. Vader is probably one of the hardest because there's no resources there. They do go to a Cowlitz County school. That's been a little less and less, but, anytime we've gotten calls from out of state, just because the people don't know who to call. And so really what that looks like for us is, here's some resources where you're from or in that state, in that county, or you can call 211. So we're not just gonna hang up, because you're not from Cowlitz County. We want to make sure they have resources for where they're at.
Is Great Rivers one of your funding sources? Great Rivers Behavioral Health?
No.
What drives Janice House? Is it you three? So what happens when you three don't do it anymore? Is nobody to drive it? The only reason I ask it, because I think we have some great small organizations that make a difference here. I can point to them. Gary's Place, Faithful Servants, Family Promise over here, and they, Chai Cafe. They have, those particular ones kind of have a church organization behind them. It doesn't have to be that. What helps you? Or is it just you three are driven to make this happen?
Yes, all three of us are very driven. It's, you definitely don't get into this line of work because you want to make money. You just don't, unless you're a for-profit empire working with youth.
Right.
It takes a ton of heart and a ton of passion. Especially to get to the point, where we're at and just to continue. I am hopeful, that eventually someday, sometime, the programs that we would like to start to kind of start to fill in these gaps that we're seeing, that there will become funding available. We started out with 6 staff, and then we had 2 volunteers. And we're part of the original 3 from 2016. I think that when you start to see budget cuts happening and that sort of thing, it really is a test of your passion. Are you going to continue to do the work and push forward, and keep looking for other resources and funding? Absolutely, we are.
Since 2016, you've probably seen a lot of kids. It's probably hard to ask numbers, but I'm wondering if you have a sense of what kids that came in struggling or broken and now have finished school or gone on and are living in society as you would expect them to live.
So actually, we don't have like a number, but I can tell you our kids, most of them always come back. And they're grown now, have families of their own. And so whether it be like through social media that they reach out or them coming by, it actually happens pretty frequently. And just thank you, back in that time of my life. And there's just no words for it. So,
Yeah.
There's no way, it's not like we're gonna try to find everyone and send out surveys, but
Yeah, I know that.
the
That's difficult.
ones that do reach back out to us, or, they'll send us a card in the mail. Like we still are actually in touch with so many of them,
Quite a few.
so
Quite a
many
few.
of them. Yeah.
And then referrals in from, hey, Janice House helped me. You should go see them. And so when a new youth shows up, so-and-so sent me, like, oh, all right, it's nice that we're still thought of by our successes.
Yeah, we've had, quite a few come back that have, babies of their own. And so we've kind of been deemed the Janice grandmas. And so they'll come back just, for their little ones to say hi and meet us. So it's been pretty amazing.
Well, very interesting. If I wanted to come over and visit, who do I contact? Just walk through the door or just?
So we do quite a few walkthroughs for anybody who's interested. We just schedule that outside of the time that the house is open for the youth. That's kind of their safe spot, their sanctuary.
Yeah.
And so we'll schedule that at a different time, just so, they're not there and like all these strange adults are walking by. So yeah, I mean, anytime we actually really do love doing that and just kind of a walkthrough to look, at what the youth have access to.
If I can make a suggestion, I like what you guys are doing. You made a comment about you're gonna continue to seek out funding, regardless of budget cuts and that type of stuff, which is admirable, and I feel that you need to do that. One of the things that would help, and you have a couple of numbers there, but when you're seeking out money, if you can say, hey, in the last 5 years, we have helped 175 kids you know, and I understand on a limited budget, you can't add too many things to what you're doing. I totally get it. But that is one of the things that I think might help secure more funding for you, is to be able to say, we had 100 and, I mean, you know, like in my nonprofit, with kids, I've had about 100, I've had about 1,700 kids go through that program in the last 15 years. And several of them have graduated. In fact, Commissioner, Chairman Dahl and I just saw one of them that graduated from my program last week. She's married now, and it was pretty cool to see her. So I know exactly what you mean when kids come back. It's a pretty neat feeling. But I think to help you with that, if you could have some sort of a tracking, program to say we've had this many kids, 40 kids out of 51 placed in housing, that type of stuff. I think that would help, procure some funding. It might make it easier for you to receive it. So that's just a thought.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Do you know Kelly? Would you give her your contact information? She kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
handles
Yes.
our calendars, and I would like to get over there.
Right, yeah,
She-
absolutely.
She tells me where to go when, in a nice way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can definitely send an email. We can set up a time.
Anything else you need from us on this, Sean? Appreciate you bringing them over, right? Okay. Looks like it's being used well, so,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah. God bless you guys.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Rader, you had another leadership meeting.
Yeah, it's just
We're gonna
the,
horn in on your business, dude.
it's just the continuation of the interviewing and the hiring we did. So it was actually good. We had, one of the department heads said that they had, applied one of the things that we talked about in a previous meeting and helped two other department heads. So that was good. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
I have a procedural question.
Sure.
On the finance department, for a motion item that you said you moved it from the consent agenda to a motion item for the interlocal agreement for the Cowlitz conference. Since it's something we already voted on and it passed, we're gonna vote on it again and maybe fail it. Is that, so at any time, if somebody has a problem with something that we voted on before, we can just move it to vote on it again?
You can move it over if you want to have further discussion on it, sure.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna struggle with that, but
Yeah. Well, probably in cases, there may be times where additional information comes to light, or things between the time when we first heard it and the time it actually comes on for approval. So we do give leeway to move it over. I mean, I guess we could pass a thing, say once it's there, we don't want it, but we've always kind of given that leeway.
well, I guess depending on who it is, but the agency involved thinking that the lease for some purpose has already been approved and then come back to potentially lose it at a later date just doesn't seem fair to me, I guess. If there was more discussion that needed to happen, I think it should happen before the vote happened. But anyway,
Well,
my 2 cents.
yeah. And I think we're better at it because we never used to have these Monday meetings where we get a chance to see some of this stuff.
Right.
That particular one, I think we saw it pretty much, well, we got a list of them, and then when they came in, I don't know if we sit down and had a discussion, had a chance to talk
We got
about
it
before
we got it
that.
That same day,
Yeah.
right before we walked in. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you in the sense that this type of thing should be an exception, not a rule.
Okay.
I did have something too I wanted to see about. I went and looked at the SRS and the mud flow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, we've got the core that's about ready to drop in excess of $35 million
Raise that.
to raise it. And I wanted to see about having a workshop with the stakeholders involved and see if we can't petition the Corps or Congress to hold off on that project. And the reason I say that is we're using antiquated and data points that we didn't even have when they put that structure in. And we're not applying any of the new information, any of the new science, any of the new data points that we have to date to what we're doing right now. And I just wanted to see if we could have a workshop, invite the people who have information that they can give us, and see if we want to petition the Corps to possibly hold off. Because what I saw, there's actual scientific evidence that working with the river naturally is working, and it has been working over the last 12 to 15 years, and none of that data is being taken into consideration with this new, raising of the SRS. And there's some, I think that if you ask the Corps, you can look on their publications, they don't have anything planned after 2035. That's when their objective is over, and there's nothing after that. And so I'm one of the things that concerned me after going and looking at that is we don't have a plan for 2035. And yes, we can only raise that thing 2 more times. And then after that, that's it. There's no more, elevation that we can raise it, but there's no plan for anything in the future after that point.
Dredging permit ends in 2030, right?
Yeah, and so I think it's worth a discussion to see if maybe we can get us as a community that it directly impacts in one voice to possibly say, hey, let's talk about this instead of just making this decision to spend the $35 million.
I guess I want to know what's working with the river mean, right? The minute all the stuff is still coming downstream. The dam will retain some more, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
I think it all needs to be basically a major portion of it dredged out, at least the Cowlitz River all the way to the mouth of the Toutle needs to be dredged out and give us more room. And rather than trying to retain it upstream, let it come downstream and take care of it, dredge it out of the Cowlitz every 10 years.
Well, and you went to the collaborative meeting.
Yeah.
I went to the collaborative meeting, and none of those conversations are being had. It's just, this is what we're gonna do, and that's it.
Yeah, we were at a meeting last week, and I think it starts with, and there's a concerted effort to change what they call the WRDA, which is the directive Congress gives Army Corps. And that was with Glucin Perez, and I know the last 2 years I've personally talked with, saw Senator Murray, one of the two, never saw Senator Cantwell, but their staff. And they understand that the WRDA, and that's what we have CFM work on a lot, is that WRDA comes up in 2026, and that's the push to have that changed and turned over. I can tell you, I've asked that question to the Corps, and right now that the dam's only holding back like 16% of the silt. They believe the river has some natural action where it pushes the stuff down. They believe that it's being overwhelmed right now. If they can put that up and hold back more, that the river will naturally exit some of that stuff. That's more faith than I have, but that's what they believe.
I just look at what I was shown when I went up there, and Colin was up there, and he explained. Kudos to the guy. I had him for like 5 hours, and he answered all of my questions. It seems that it would be more beneficial to us if we work with the river as opposed to trying to bend the river to our rules and what we want it to do. And he showed, they have actual data where they put these posts into the river and made a line across it. And those posts were 14 feet above the sediment when they put them in. There's only 4 feet showing now. That's how much sediment those things have retained, like 10 feet of that stuff. And if you look, the biodiversity and all of the plant life and everything that's growing there now, it's not just, if you go look at the sediment dam, it's just a sheet of sand. There's actual trees and all sorts of stuff that's growing in that. It is working, but none of that data is being taken into consideration with what we're talking about. And one of the things that concerned me that he said was, we can only raise that one more time after this. That's it. There's no more slope that we can do, and there's no plan for it afterwards. So what are we gonna do? And one of the things that scared me was, he said that anything that goes below that sediment retention, like, for example, the diking district and all those things, those are to be handled at the local level, regardless of the impact that the stuff that they do has on our, on our river systems and on our dikes and all that kind of stuff. Those things are to be handled locally. And we don't have a say on what's going on up above.
And we don't have much say for locally either, because we can't dredge the river. That takes the Army Corps of Engineers. You can't touch a damn thing without getting in crosswise with ecology and fish and game and every other
So those are the people who have to
organization
sit here. Ecology, fish and game, Corps, and have a conversation with, I mean, I don't know how all this stuff works, I'm learning, but I think that we need to let our voices be heard if we're in agreement that.
Well, I've been trying to get the core in. The best luck I've had is going back and actually seeing him.
But I think you've heard me preach about wing dams. That post in the river, any place you put a row of poles in the river causes the current to slow down and things settle out behind it and that accumulates. And that's the whole purpose of wing dams on the Columbia River, is to slow down the sides and speed up the channel so it flushes itself out. I can't imagine why, if we're gonna mess with the river and we're gonna work with it, let's put the wing dams on both sides where we want the river to flush itself out and flush it out. The port is dredging all the time because of the amount of stuff that makes it out of the Cowlitz and down around that corner that they have to dredge in order to keep those upper docks open to use them.
And that was part of the conversation with Representative Perez that we were at last week, changed the word so that and the simple answer isn't good, or I don't agree with it, but they were given the charge by Congress for flood control. So they manage the levees and they manage flood control. The sediment, they don't
care.
They're very much on what they're told to do, which is crazy, but.
Why did they dredge it the first time? Was that not flood control?
That was all, when it first happened, everybody was gang. I don't know the correct answer to that. My guess was they were just gung ho to help with this emergency that just occurred, and they threw everything in there.
I remember.
It should be there forever.
Before that dredging happened, there was a big news article about the fact that the White House sat down and discussed whether or not they were just gonna let Cowlitz County disappear.
Well, and that's the other thing, at what point, and I hate to say this, at what point is it not worth them to save Cowlitz County? You know what I mean? And
Well, when you talk.
we think, wow, there's no point, but they look at it
You can
different.
take 50,000 people and transplant them somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we spend all kinds of money, raise holy hell about flooding that affects, in Texas, 200 people died. And so now what are you gonna do? I mean, I understand that that's a crisis, absolutely. But we're gonna sit back and wait until we got 50 to 90,000 people affected in Cowlitz County, no jobs, no houses. I mean,
And I think part of the problem, and I expressed this on, with WASAC, they're updating policy, and I had a call with them last week, is, when this happened back then, 45 years ago, it was a big event. Everybody back there was in tune with what was going on. And now it's been 45 years. There's nobody back there that was part of that first except we're the ones that live it.
Right.
And so at some point in time, they need to start transitioning that control back to the people who actually deal with it and not hang on to it and make us go to Washington DC to beg to take care of it when they don't even know.
What the hell's going on?
Right,
'Cause
exactly.
they're still using information and data points from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
That's how they determined that they were gonna raise it again, was because of what they did 45 years ago. And it's like, have you guys not learned anything in 40 years?
Yeah.
And
It's not national news. So as long as it's not on the headlines, national news, they don't give a shit about it. I mean, that's just that easy.
I totally agree with you that the whole way they look at it needs to change. And I can tell you that that process is in and we should keep pushing it.
And the thing that, two things that I learned that really jaded me a little bit is the reason that this project is moving forward is because there was an upward trend in sediment deposits prior to COVID. And then they stopped the funding of it during COVID. So for 3 years, there was no observation of it or monitoring of it whatsoever.
Right.
They made the decision to do this based on those numbers. Well, if you look at those numbers, actually, they're all flat and they're way down compared to what they were when they made the decision to do this. So we're going to spend $35 million on a 5-year-old decision that we didn't take into account the previous 5 years of sediment drop, but we're going to do it because it was high at that point. That doesn't make any sense to me. And this is all about people saving face to, well, what happens if we don't spend the money, we don't get it again. I'm not for that thinking whatsoever at all. The other thing that's interesting to me is to your point, no local voice is taken into account in that decision-making process at all.
It's a frustration.
Yeah. So I wanted to just bring it up and see what your guys' thoughts were. And I mean, maybe if we can get all the mayors, the commissioners, on board to write a letter to Perez and say, hey, this needs to be, we need to at least think about this before we just go and dump 35 million bucks.
I actually would prefer they start talking about the Coldwater Lake and what happens there and maybe some of those.
Situation.
And the final Forest Service plan should be coming out pretty soon and start thinking about funding for that. Cause if that breached and people say, well, it's been there 45 years. Well, so was Rock Creek until it decided not to be there. And
that brings up a good point. I asked about that. And if we use the pilings and things and stuff grows, the point that Colin made is if that lake does go, would you rather have a valley full of trees and forage and stuff to slow that water down? Because when they raise that, it's actually going to back that river up, I guess, probably 3 to 4 miles. And everything that's in there is going to die and it's just going to be flat silt again. So that water is just going to have straight shot right down the valley, as opposed to having vegetation and, forest and trees and stuff to slow that water down as it's cut that wall of water, if that happens.
yeah,
But that's what I'm saying. There's no forethought after this contract expires.
yeah.
That breached and came down. I don't care how many trees you have in there. That's how much shit's gonna be in the river when it comes down. You're gonna be adding to it.
That always seems to be the elephant in the corner of the room and nobody wants to tackle because it's
If
so
you ever
expensive.
saw the videos when the guys that were standing at Tootle Lake, when they took the bridge out up there, and listened to the recording of the Cowlitz County Sheriff that was up there screaming, talking on the radio, and he was crying about all the bodies he saw in the river. And he thought they were human beings, but they were elk that were rolling down, had to burn their skin off of them. They were rolling in the water and he saw the bodies and he thought they were human beings. And the guy was a county sheriff crying on the radio.
If it had been a Saturday, it would have been human beings.
And you're damn right. And you look at the amount of logs and everything, and there was a lady in the Harry Gardner campgrounds that survived that thing, that was in there camping, and all of a sudden she found herself in the middle of a log jam going down the river, and she was rolling with the logs, and it stuck her underwater, and she popped back up and stuck her underwater. She thought she was gonna die. There was a whole story that was written about her. And I can remember, I can't even imagine being in a log jam that is just constantly twisting and turning, and she's so lucky she didn't get crushed to death. It kept just popping her back up and she got her breath and she finally got out of it. But my God, can you imagine, if you look at that, you'd think that Weyerhaeuser logged 500 acres of timber and it was all coming down the river. And it was just a big,
It was
it
incredible.
was gray water and it was just filled with timber and trees and elk and deer and everything that went with it.
Pretty amazing.
I can't even imagine if that dam turned loose up there and it came down through here. I can't even imagine what we'd look like. We'd be probably sitting on top of silt right here. Bad news.
Yep.
I think they need to address everything from the mouth of the Cowlitz all the way to the mountain. There should not be any question about what are we doing with not this section of it, but the whole damn thing. We need an overall plan.
Yeah.
Start hacking at it every few years to take another chunk of it.
And I think most of Cowlitz County is, I didn't even think about this till I became a commissioner. And then I started seeing it. I go, oh, wow, this thing's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Not even, and I think there's a lot of people out there like that. They don't understand that this, and I try to explain every once in a while, this is bigger than you think.
Anybody under the age of maybe 60, 50 or 60, somewhere in there, they grew up with this. They have, what are you talking about? What's the danger? They never seen the threat.
Yeah. I think, you know, what your suggestion would be a good thing, because I think we should all have a common plan and say, hey, this is how we want the word to be changed. We want their responsibilities to be changed. And if everybody down here or close to everybody down here buys off of that, that carries more weight than the yearly visit back to DC or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it would have some value if that's what you're asking. I think it would have some value.
Yeah, I didn't know what that process looked like, but I think it would be something that would be worthwhile. And, you know, like at the collaborative, oh, we have to do this, the Congress says this. And I'm like, we're operating on, you guys are driving cars with carburetors and we've had fuel injection for 20 years now. How about we update where we're at? And if we need to change the rules to make things work, then change the rules.
That may be, that could very well be worth a workshop with Fish and Wildlife and everybody, just to discuss how we want the word to read, because right now I think we have an idea what we want to see, and others may have a different idea. And I think a collective group think this is how we want it to read would probably be more powerful.
I think we need a 3-page letter that, a real brief history of Mount St. Helens, and then an explanation of Congress not doing a damn thing to help us, and when are you gonna help us, and mail it to every congressman and every senator. Every 3 months, send them a new update newsletter of when is Congress gonna help us. Because I think we're not ever gonna finance, locally, we'll never finance dredging the Cowlitz River.
I even asked the question if back with the head, if Cowlitz County found a money tree and could buy their own dredge, could we dredge that deal? And he goes, no.
Exactly.
And I asked the question, why was this not the topic of conversation at the collaborative? Why this chart that Colin showed me, I said, why was this not shown to everybody in that room? And he said, it just didn't make it on the agenda. And I said, well, that sucks. I'm sorry, but that's what we should have been talking about, not fundraising and keeping the collaborative going. We need to be talking about the issues that we're facing.
Yeah.
So what I got out of that collaborative thing was we all need to be coming together and building relationships. And I don't think in a professional manner, if you're gonna hire somebody to do a job, you don't need to sit down and have lunch with them for 2 months before you
Just decide on the parameters and let's move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay, get me out of here.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.